Coming up on Currently, Beth Milligan brings us updates on addressing homelessness in the region, plus a riverfront design and some big culinary news. That's all ahead on Currently. Welcome to Currently, where we discuss some of the top local stories directly from the journalists who are covering them. I'm your host, Crystal Frost, and this podcast was recorded on a frigid Thursday afternoon, January 22nd. But baseball is on the horizon. The Traverse City Pittsfitters home opener is Wednesday, May 27th, and the Spits take on the Rockford Riveters. Individual tickets will be available soon. Support for Currently comes from West Shore Bank. When you choose West Shore Bank, you're not just choosing a bank. You are choosing a partner committed to the well-being of our community. Visit them today on 8th Street in Traverse City or at westshorebank.com. Support also comes from Old Town Playhouse, where community comes together in downtown Traverse City. You can find out about all of their upcoming shows, including Misery, starting in February. Welcome to Beth Milligan, head writer for Traverse City Ticker. It's a duo show.
It's a duo show, going back to our OG roots.
OG roots, yeah. It's just the two of us, and we can't afford to sing that song.
Yeah, I know. I was going to, and then I was like, oh, I can't sing.
Well,
I forgot.
We can't. I know. We can't afford it. Oh, darn it. But we can. What we can do for y'all is talk about some local news. We are hyper-local in this podcast.
Yes.
That was always the plan, you know?
Yeah.
We wanted to be hyper-local.
And we're doing it, baby.
Yeah, we are doing it. We're going to start off with a very important continuing story, as you have been covering this issue for a number of years at this point. And you had a story that you wrote in Thursday's edition of the Ticker, traverseticker.com, by the way, all about some plan to try to tackle the issue of homelessness in this region. And it starts with the Housing and Homelessness Task Force. So why don't you take us right from the beginning?
Yeah. I mean, as you mentioned, this is like obviously the issue of housing and homelessness is a topic that comes up in a lot of different iterations on the show and in the news. This was an important week, though, because the Housing and Homelessness Task Force, which is led by the Northwest Michigan Coalition to End Homelessness, it also has representation from the city of Traverse City, Grand Traverse County, Rotary Cherries provided some grant funding for it. This group has been meeting for the past year to come up with a concrete set of recommendations for how to address the housing shortage and homelessness issues in the region, most specifically. And on Wednesday, they presented this set of recommendations first to the county commissioners in the morning, and then the afternoon and evening, they had two public open houses at the governmental center. I went to one of those in the afternoon and attended that presentation. And they essentially shared, there were 14 key recommendations. They had been working with a lot of different community stakeholders. They were looking at areas like safety net services, emergency shelter and services, and housing solutions. Those are kind of the three buckets. And they had about 14 recommendations. Some of the top ones, you know, that look like are going to be the most strongest to be pursued, that kind of the things that we'll be really focusing on likely for the next couple of years, were one, creating a sustainable shelter funding plan for the region. So that would be something that would kind of blend all the federal, state, philanthropic, local government funding into a coordinated regional budget so that it's a long-term stable budget for shelter operations, instead of having to kind of go into this crisis fundraising mode that a lot of nonprofits have to do, or one-time grants. How can we make a sustainable funding plan? So that was one. And then the other one was consolidating shelter operations.
Oh, wow.
That got the most discussion, and I think will get the most discussion going forward, essentially talking about creating a centralized campus that would provide, you know, sort of a one-stop shop for services for unhoused individuals. So this would be both day services where you go and do laundry, charge your phone, get warm, get a meal, and overnight services year-round. So now we see those services provided by multiple entities in the area. We have Safe Harbor.
Yes.
We have Jubilee House. Central United Methodist Church provides breakfast in the morning, Goodwill Inn. So they're all kind of spread out. They're working together, but they're in these disparate locations. recommendations. One of the key recommendations is to consolidate that onto one campus. The leading contender would likely be the Goodwill Inn property on Keystone Road in Garfield Township. They have the land for an expansion. They are open to the possibility. This is something, though, that still has to be explored. So the officials involved were very careful to emphasize that the next phase will be working with a consultant to do a feasibility study to make sure that that is a viable financial plan, a logistical plan. And then that would also probably look at things, Christal, like if, they were to consolidate on Goodwill's campus, what's going to happen to Safe Harbor's property? Right. What's going to happen to Jubilee House? So maybe those organizations will be able to redirect their staff or volunteer or financial resources into one place, saving some of the costs elsewhere. Maybe the city, for example, could redevelop the Safe Harbor site for housing or sell it and use some of the proceeds for supporting the new campus. So it's not a done deal. They will also look at other properties. They could even look at expanding Safe Harbor where it is now. But they did say that the leading contender would be the Goodwill site.
So it's interesting. I have this faint memory of a conversation like this happening way back in the early aughts, I want to say like 2006, 2007, when the Goodwill Inn first opened. And they were really talking about bringing in more of a campus for all of these other nonprofits so that, when people needed shelter, when they needed something, there was kind of this campus where it would be easier for people to get that. And it's interesting to me because I remember this way back in the day. And then there were a lot of conversations about busing because we didn't quite have the robust beta system that we have today. So there were a lot of conversations about how do people get to to this campus. And that might not be a problem anymore, though.
Yeah, and that came up. I mean, I will say that one thing I was struck by looking through this plan, which had lots of other recommendations too, everything from, standardizing trauma-informed care at shelters to increasing zoning and density flexibility so we can build more housing, working on upstream prevention. So there are a lot of things in this plan. I was struck by the thoroughness that I saw in the plan in terms of each of those recommendations went through a really specific set of criteria. I mean, they were looking, when they came up with an idea like this, they were looking at everything from, is this data informed? Does this align with our task force values? Does this harm anyone, any of the stakeholders involved? Does it provide measurable outcomes? So before the recommendation even got onto the list in the plan, it had to go through those criteria. So for example, with consolidating on the Goodwill Inn property, they talked about, one, is this not just a benefit for special interest groups or the community partners? Is it better for the guests, for the unhoused individuals who need these services? They talked about transportation. I think they did feel, Goodwill has been operating there since 2006. They do have transportation for their guests into the city. So they wanted to make sure that they're not essentially, which, some advocates for the neighborhoods in particular have sort of suggested that, pushing unhoused individuals out of the city, you want to be careful that you're not just offloading them somewhere in a sort of negative way, get the problem out of your neighborhood kind of thing, and making it difficult for them to access the services they need. But they did feel like Goodwill has that transportation system and that it could work there. But that's something that they'll be looking at as they evaluate the feasibility. I thought it was interesting. Benjamin Marentet, the city manager, said he was recently in Palm Springs and met with the city manager there. That community is quite interesting. They have had a 63% drop in unhoused individuals living on the street in 3 years.
Wow.
Just since 2023. And a big way that they did that was very similar to what the task force recommendations are. They had community collaboration across multiple entities, and they have a centralized campus for services. So Benjamin said he was encouraged by that. He felt like the task force is on the right track. But again, these are early recommendations. They're still getting that community feedback, and then there will still be this study to see if the campus would work.
I think, as you wrote in the story, this task force, they're ready to hire a consultant.
Yeah, they said they had the funding available and would likely be doing that within the next week. So that, process of actually doing the feasibility study, that's something that usually takes, I would imagine, at least several months to get through. But in the meantime, the services that we have in place now are still operating. Safe Harbor's operating year-round. Got that permission from the city last year. We still have, Central United Methodist Church and these other partners. The county's quick response team is doing more and more work countywide. So all of those existing resources will stay in place. Yeah. But this is working towards maybe a better solution in the future.
One thing that I really have seen improve, in my long time here as someone, growing up in Grand Traverse County, I really see these organizations that all have the same goal, and they're really working well together and talking to each other and ensuring that, these client needs are being met, so it doesn't feel like it's siloed.
Yeah, that is a big thing. And I've seen that as well. And, that would explain, too, why another top priority on the list is to expand permanent supportive housing in the community. Because ultimately, this is an old cliche within the service industry, but housing is what solves homelessness. Yeah. You need housing. So it's not just let's get them all into a campus and then they just live in the campus forever. Right. It's like, how do we build more housing? They talked about not just permanent supportive, which is when you have a lot of rental assistance and also on-site help to transition out of homelessness and get stable, but also what they call deeply affordable housing, which is for 0 to 30% of the area median income. That might be a maximum household income of $22,000. So we're talking about low income, but we need housing for those categories of folks who maybe aren't quite on the streets, but might be in jeopardy or living, really tight paycheck to paycheck. And so that's going to be something else, is we got to get the housing part of it solved too.
I'm really interested on the upstream side of things too, because to reduce the instance of homelessness, and I know that a lot of conversation has been had about maybe spending more time on the eviction prevention and things like that, but at some point, sometimes we need to go even further upstream. So I love what they're doing. I love the task force. I think it's great. And thank you so much for reporting on it.
Thank you.
When we come back, we're going to talk about the new riverfront design, and we've got some yummy culinary news. But right now, a word for our lead supporter, West Shore Bank. And, friends, if you're anything like me, January is when I'm craving a fresh start. After all the holiday chaos and cookies, I just want to take a breath and regroup and feel a little more in control of my money. And that's why I love the Savings Center from West Shore Bank. It's right inside the WSB Touch app, and it makes saving feel simple. It's not stressful. I can set goals for the year ahead. I can automate transfers, so it's basically on autopilot, and even round up my everyday purchases, so I'm actually saving without even thinking about it, which is very good for me. Whether I'm trying to bounce back after the holidays, plan something fun down the road, or just create a little more breathing room in 2026, the Savings Center helps me stay on track. And I love that West Shore Bank is local. These are real people, real support right here in our community. So here's to a calmer, more confident new year. Open the WSB Touch app and check out the Savings Center today. West Shore Bank, savings made simple. Products and services may require enrollment. Other terms, conditions, and fees may apply. And welcome back to Currently as we shift gears and we're going on the river, baby. I'm obsessed with this. Yeah. I just have to say right now that the riverfront project is cool. It's sleek. And I need to know more.
Sure. So this was a story that we did on Saturday after the Friday Traverse City Downtown Development Authority meeting. The board at that meeting approved the schematic design for what could be a $5.7 million reconstruction of the lower Boardman Riverwalk area. So the project area that we're talking about is specifically the J. Smith Walkway, which connects, from Front Street near Pangea's over to the alley. Mm-hmm. And then in that alley, some pedestrian amenities that would cross over to the pedestrian bridge that goes to the farmer's market lot. That bridge would be replaced. So all those kind of three areas, the alley, J. Smith Walkway, and the bridge are part of this project. And this came about because we've talked on the show before about TIF 97, which is one of the two big funding sources for downtown, is expiring next year. There's a certain amount of funding left that they want to tackle a couple big projects with. And now TIF 97 could be extended as a new TIF plan, but that has to go to voters. So that's very much a to be determined. In the meantime, this Riverwalk project is one of the three, along with the Farmers Market Pavilion and Rotary Square, that they wanted to tackle. So they've been working on the design this year, and the consulting company Inform Studio came to the board and showed the design. We have some pictures of it with the article, and they essentially just kind of outlined what's going to happen. For the J. Smith Walkway, the idea is, right now if you walk through it, that it's not been functional for a while, but there's that big fountain in the middle.
Yeah.
That kind of constrains the pedestrian traffic when you're trying to pass through, especially during really busy times like Cherry Festival or this summer. So kind of clearing it so it's a clear, open walkway with a tree canopy on either side, so kind of a tree-lined clearing. There would still be some benches and tables, but it would start with more of an urban feel closer to Front Street, and then as you get closer to the river, it has some more landscaping, more of a natural feel to kind of visually say, hey, we're heading to the river now. Coming out of the walkway, the idea would be that there would be kind of a pedestrian plaza there that would continue. So it'd be the same materials all the way through the walkway to the farmer's market lot. So you can see, okay, this is a path that I follow. That would go into the alley up to the new bridge. The alley would still be open for cars to come through. So traffic could come through. They would be taking out some parking to make this pedestrian area in a sort of a speed table or a bump. So basically for cars that sometimes kind of whiz through that alley.
Just a little bit.
As you're popping out of the walkway, you see, oh, this goes to the bridge. Cars would have a speed bump and also see this plaza that sort of says, hey, you need to slow down because pedestrians are coming through here. And then there would be a new bridge going over the river. This isn't just for fun or an aesthetic bridge. The existing bridge that is there is near the end of its useful life.
Yeah, it's not good.
It's still okay. City engineering has said it's still okay to cross right now. It's not dangerous to the public, but it is getting there. It needs to be replaced at some point. So that's why there's a new bridge.
So it's a functional use as well.
Yes, it's not just aesthetic. So this new bridge, which kind of has an interesting curved design, that's to give enough of a height over the river and also enough runway for ADA accessibility, would cross over, and then there'd be some amenities on the other side. It would kind of step down to the river. So if you wanted to wheel or walk down to the river, you could. They showed some interesting lighting design options, which would be lower instead of like the glaring overhead light. It'd be all low surface lighting, which can be different colors, so they could change it during different festivals or events. So it was really well received by the board. I would say, there still has to be some discussion about the budget, to see if all three of these big projects can be done or if they're going to take two of the three. Maybe one moves to the new TIF plan if it gets approved.
Sure.
But there's at least a design for all three of these, and, they'll be talking about how to move forward.
And we'll kind of take it from there, huh? Did anybody object to removing that non-functioning fountain?
No, I didn't hear that at all. I will just say, and I maybe could confess to being a bit of a prankster teenager who may or may not have put soap in the past.
I thought you did. Yes.
I can confess to it now because this was a while ago. So don't be mad at me, DDA. It was a long time ago. I was not the only teenager who did that.
Name names.
That fountain had a lot of issues over the year. Mechanical, people messing with it, I will say. So it hasn't been functioning for a while.
And it wasn't your fault.
And it wasn't just my fault. It was a very long time ago. But yeah, no, that would come out. I think because, also too, we have the water feature of the river. And the whole idea of this project, I will say, this came out of the Lower Boardman River Unified Plan, which was highly impacted by the public. There was a lot of public input for that plan. The whole idea is that instead of, we essentially have our back to the river downtown now, especially in like the Front Street area. All the businesses, face the street. This idea is like, how do we turn our attention to the river and pay, give it more respect, draw pedestrians to it, and also do some environmental enhancements that will also help the river.
I mean, I'm also all about like the footlights, the disco ones.
Yeah.
Like set to music.
Yeah.
But no one can hear it.
Okay. Well, I think you should just bring that up during the next public comment.
I will.
We'll put that on your long list of Christal's ideas.
I will.
For Traverse.
Christal's ideas. And we will have disco music, and people have to guess the song by the lights.
Okay.
Okay, it's terrible.
No,
that one I'm not standing by.
No dumb ideas.
All right. We're going to move on to talking about some culinary news. And let me just tell you right now that the dinner for the incredible man, Pete Peterson, who is going to honor his career as a mentor to so many wonderful chefs in our area, that sold out so quickly.
Yes, it did.
But it's for good reason. I mean, this guy is incredible. Tell us all about Pete and his influence.
Yeah, I thought just a couple nice culinary stories because it's hard sometimes to find a lot of good news in the world. And these were two nice stories to write this week. And we obviously have a foodie community here in Traverse City that really loves our restaurant scene. So yeah, this story I wrote about Pete Peterson, who was the owner and chef of Tapawingo, which many people remember, very legendary restaurant out in Ellsworth that closed in 2009, but it was open for 25 years out there. And Pete really, before every restaurant in Traverse City was a quote unquote farm to table restaurant, Pete was the originator.
He was the farm to table
in our area. He certainly helped pioneer that kind of fine dining cuisine. And then just imagine at the time, in the early 80s, coming to a little place like Ellsworth and, starting this restaurant that so many famous chefs came to and did dinners or dined there and raved about it, from Emeril Lagasse. Pete was friends over the years with Thomas Keller, Julia Child.
Wow.
Yeah. Charlie Trotter is a very famous Chicago chef, came up and stood on the chair in the middle of Tapawingo and licked his plate just to prove how delicious it was. There's all these great stories. And so, now Pete, he had this long career. He went on to teach at the Culinary Institute. He also helped launch Alliance, which was a very acclaimed restaurant here in Traverse City that later closed, but he was a part of that. And now, he's in his 80s. He's kind of, taken a step back. He's here at Cordia here in town. And Jen Blakesley from the Cook's House with her partner, Eric Pedersen at the restaurant, decided they wanted to do this tribute dinner for him. That he has influenced so many chefs, many who worked at Tapawingo at different points of their career, or who learned from him, mentored by him, taught by him at the Culinary Institute, whatever it might be. So this dinner, which did sell out
very
almost instantly, probably understandably so given the lineup, but it's a fundraising dinner for the Culinary Institute. It'll be held on March 12th. It's everyone from, chefs from Stella, Blue, Cook's House, Wren,
Sugar to Salt,
Crocodile Palace, Mission Table, Modern Bird, which we'll talk about in just a minute. So really great lineup. And I think, when I talked to Pete, he was so touched by it and kind of flabbergasted by all. I mean, some people are flying in from a Michelin-starred restaurant in San Francisco, Statebird Provisions. So it'll be a nice tribute to someone who had a really big impact on the culinary scene here.
I've said this before. I stand by it. I love the chef culture, period. Not just in this town. I think that people who spend their time, their nights, their holidays pleasing other people. I mean, it's just a special breed, I mean, when you are going to work, when other people are going out, right?
Yeah.
It's just, you have to have this sort of grit. And I think it's fantastic. And to see someone who influenced so many of those people be honored like this is wonderful.
Yeah. So it'll be a great one.
Yeah, I'm going to get all teared up. And I'm not even, I don't know how to cook. I don't. I mean, I can kind of follow a recipe, but it's just not my jam, right?
Yeah.
And yet I am obsessed with people who do know how to cook. So there you go.
And they're very supportive of each other here in Northern Michigan, I will say. They I think this dinner shows up.
Let's move on to talking about Modern Bird. This is huge news.
Yeah. So I was, happy to see this for these guys because they've only been open a few years. So Andy Elliott and Emily Stewart, who are married and the co-owners and co-chefs at Modern Bird on West Front Street, have been named nominated for the James Beard Awards this year. One of the highest culinary awards available in the industry. And again, they've only just been open a few years there. This is kind of coming on the heels of a really big last year for them because in September, They were chosen as one of the 50 best restaurants in America by the New York Times. I think the only Michigan restaurant that was on that list.
Wow.
So they had that huge recognition in the fall, and then that's followed by this James Beard nomination. So I talked to Andy Elliott on Wednesday. I had just seen it that morning. He was just starting to get the text. He was at the restaurant. They were very surprised and happy. He was kind of joking between the New York Times and this award, that nomination, that he said, everyone thinks we have great PR, but you are talking to the PR. Like, it is just me. Like, we don't have like a special PR team or like a firm. He's like, this is it. And he said, obviously the hard work that his team has helped him with at the restaurant was credited, Traverse City's kind of culinary spotlight in general. But also he said, we talk in pre-shift all the time about trying to be 1% better every day.
Wow.
And he's like, I think that's, this is the recognition for that. He's like, it doesn't change our day to day. Even being nominated, we're not going to stop trying to get better. So I will just say this is a very elite group. Stella Miles Anton was previously nominated in the Great Lakes category, which is the same one that Modern Bird is. Last year, Jen and Eric from Cook's House were finalists. So just for folks who don't know, you have this semifinalist. This is like the long list that comes out.
Sure.
And then in the spring, it gets nominated, or it gets shortened down to the short list, the real finalists. And then it goes to the winners announced in June in Chicago.
Yeah.
So even making it on this list, though, is a huge recognition by the industry. I
mean, absolutely huge. And I have to say, I was able to get some reservations for 2 people at the counter. This is how quickly they're filling up for Restaurant Week. And this is before this was announced, and it was still pretty full.
And I luckily had mine.
You did.
I had no. This is not like me having a special inside track as a journalist.
You have to do the same thing.
I do the same thing everyone else. I had no idea they were going to get nominated. I already had I usually get all my Restaurant Week reservations early because they do book up a lot of places, and so I had them. You can check on their website, which I think is modernbirdtc.com. If not for Restaurant Week, then they certainly have other dates coming up if you haven't been in yet. But I would just say for any folks, we can just do a quick plug at the end that Restaurant Week is coming up February 22nd through the 28th. If you go to downtowntc.com, they'll show you the participating restaurants, and they'll start adding menus soon. But I would get those reservations, especially for the restaurants like this that are hard to
I think it's great.
Fast.
I don't know who I'm taking yet. So, I mean, maybe if anybody is
Jordan
interested. No, I don't know. He's waving at me right now. He's like, hello.
You're like, hey, we'll see.
I'm taking applications for a date to take to Modern Bird because everybody's going to want to be there. How about that?
We'll do an update on the show about how your dating process goes.
And how my marriage is
and also how your marriage is going.
Faring from that. There you go. Well, Beth, I mean, really great stories this week. And as always, you really should be subscribed to The Ticker. So go to traverseticker.com, hit subscribe. It'll go directly into your email. That way you don't have to search for it. And make sure you're following The Ticker on all the social media as well. Before we go, we like to talk about what we are doing and what we're up to this week. Anything in your world?
Yes. I am going to Alpena this weekend, which is actually my hometown. It's where I was born. And I went there every summer growing up. But I'm going this weekend because it's the Thunder Bay International Film Festival, which is Alpena's film festival. And this is the second year I'm judging the Sanctuary Selections competition, which is a short film competition. We have some great films in the finalists, including one here from Traverse City, Nick Loud and Dan Manchuria worked on one that's going to be in the finalist. But this is a great film festival, and I love going every year.
Oh, so fantastic. So, put that on your calendar for next year. It's a great...
or if you're seeing this today, Friday, you can pop... It's only a couple hours over to Alpena. You can pop over.
I mean, it's going to be cold everywhere.
It's going to be freezing cold everywhere, but I'll be inside warm watching movies. So
love it. And that's where everyone else should be. Well, I am going to be nice and warm inside, and my grandchildren, my babies. I've got Nolan, who is going to be 4, and Eli, who's going to be 2. They're spending the night.
Aww,
I know. So
fun.
We're going to do a little sleepover. I'm super excited. And, they have other grandmas. I'm aware of this, right? And they're wonderful people, but I am always vying for that number 1 spot. So I'm just like, what can I do?
How can I bribe them?
Yeah, like 36 hours that they will be with me. What can I do? So that's what I'm working on right now. I almost bought one of those indoor bounce houses to put up in my basement.
And then you were like, Did you bring yourself back to sanity?
No. Then I was like, because that will get me in the number one spot.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to buy it.
Okay. I thought I was trying to help again your marriage by talking you out of that. But
I see my husband waving his arms again. Okay. Sorry, between asking for dates and buying bounce houses, I might be in some rough water. All right. Well, Beth, as always, thank you so much for another great episode of Currently. We're going to be back with more coverage of local news, hyper-local news next week with very special guest Art Bukowski. And you can be sure to subscribe to the show on all of the platforms at crystalfrost.com. Follow us on social media. We're everywhere, including TikTok. And subscribe to Currently with Crystal Frost wherever you get your podcasts. You can also watch the show in full color on YouTube and on Facebook. Currently is a Compass Local podcast produced by the wonderful Pancake Boy Productions in Traverse City. Big thanks to our sponsors, Old Town Playhouse, and to our lead supporter, the wonderful West Shore Bank. We'll see you next week.